Hello, hello. Welcome back to our channel, Atma Occult,
where we compile useful information from classical occult traditions to help you get more out of life.
Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out, and then you'll be up to date on all of our new information that is coming out. So today we're going to talk to you about solar eclipses. I'm sure everyone has heard of them. Some of you might have seen them. However, in Vedic astrology, a solar eclipse is actually considered an inauspicious event. The effects of a solar eclipse can be a little astrologically chaotic. And so we're making this video to help you avoid any potential negative effects that could come from a solar eclipse. It's said that at the moment of an eclipse, the shadow planet Rahu is obscuring and weakening the sun's energy.
And this kind of goes back to an ancient story from Vedic texts that relates to Vedic astrology. In the ancient stories, Rahu originally was considered a demon named Sūryāya, who tried to steal the nectar of immortality from the gods. And because of this mistake, he had to disguise himself through yogic powers in order to be able to sit amongst the gods to have a chance at getting a little drop of this nectar of immortality. And the sun and the moon were the ones sitting on either side of Sūryāya, who pointed out that he was an imposter. And because of that, he was ultimately killed, his head severed from his body. And that mythologically became the head as Rahu and the body as Ketu, eternally transiting backwards through the zodiac as the points of eclipses for the sun and the moon, respectively. Anyway, so the energy of the solar eclipse kind of represents Rahu's eternal grudge against the sun for pointing him out and preventing him from being able to steal that nectar of immortality. And so Rahu is said to, at certain times, come and try to swallow the sun, but ultimately fails, obviously, because he's not powerful enough to do that. But you can see this illustrated in some of the Thai images of Rahu, which are very popular. They depict Rahu kind of as a demon like this, opening his mouth with a globe, a golden globe, as the sun in the mouth of Rahu. So
yeah, and so because the sun represents the Atma, yes, like in Atma Occult, the Atma, or true identity of every living being, as well as vitality, consciousness, illumination, these things can all be negatively affected when a solar eclipse takes place. And this can just cause some disturbance in our minds, in the environment, somewhat similar to when a planet goes retrograde. If you haven't checked out our Mercury retrograde
video, how to protect yourself during Mercury retrograde.
Yeah, which is also very helpful, so check that one out because we're actually going through that.
We'll put a link in the description.
Yeah, we're going through that right now, but
a lot of astrological events happening.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, which is kind of why things are, I don't know if they are chaotic for you, but there has been a lot of chaos going on with us. But anyway.
So, astrologically, the reason for these disturbances or a little bit of chaos that can come along with solar eclipses, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something that is going to affect everyone, and it affects the whole world. So it doesn't mean something terrible is going to happen. Yeah. But these are just going to be some tips that can help you mitigate some of the potential negative effects. But the astrological reason for that negativity is because Rahu's energy, for that small period of time that the eclipse is taking place, Rahu's energy is kind of predominating over the sun. And Rahu in Vedic astrology represents Maya, illusion, disillusionment, smoke that clouds the vision. And so during this time period, all of those things can kind of take place or leave an imprint on the consciousness, which we kind of want to avoid.
But luckily for all of us, the Vedic texts offer some remedies that can help shield ourselves from the negative effects and even harness the moment of an eclipse as a very powerful opportunity to amplify your inner growth and transformation.
So the exact time that the eclipse is taking place is on this particular eclipse is on Saturday, March 29th in the United States. And in Central Standard Time, that's going to be around 3:50 a.m. to 7:44 a.m. You can convert that if you're Eastern, it's going to be an hour later, or whatever time zone you're in around the world. One thing to note is that it's visible primarily from the northeastern United States, Canada, and Greenland. And so those areas, astrologically, the eclipse will affect everyone to some degree, but those areas where the eclipse is visible, which is also called the eclipse path, are going to be most affected. And one thing, this isn't a prediction video, but one thing that can happen is that in the weeks or months after the eclipse takes place, the areas along that eclipse path, because they were affected by the eclipse, something can happen related to those areas. And so one of the areas that is most under this eclipse path where it's visible is Greenland. So I'm not making any specific predictions about that, but there could be some information that comes out in the news in the weeks after March 29th that could be interesting because of that effect of the solar eclipse.
Yeah, and as we always say, no such thing as coincidences in astrology.
So there are a few things that we can recommend from classical sources to avoid during the eclipse, and there's going to be a few things that you can do as well. We'll start by listing some of the things that you can avoid. But before that, I'll just explain a little bit. When the solar eclipse is taking place, it's kind of considered astrologically that Rahu's energy is getting this chance for this small window of time, for this like 4-hour period of time, to kind of predominate more than Rahu's energy ever would be able to predominate, because Rahu and the sun are enemies, and so Rahu,
it's also a shadow planet.
Is a shadow
and
planet.
It's not a physical
Chaya Graha.
Yeah, it's not a physical planet in our solar system.
Yeah, it's a mathematical point along the ecliptic where the eclipse takes place. But Rahu's energy in that time period when the eclipse is happening kind of gets a chance to predominate over the earth, and you can almost think about it like there's this blanket coming over the surface of the earth of a little bit of this energy of illusion and kind of like clouding the mind.
In fact, isn't this like, because we just said how you can't actually see, Rahu and Ketu because they're mathematical points, they're not physical planets, isn't during an eclipse, it is said actually that is the only time a person can physically see Rahu or Ketu. That's why, to Jack's point about this is when Rahu can be seen, hence more powerful.
Yeah, so the image of a solar eclipse is often used to signify Rahu, or as like the physical image of Rahu. That moment where the solar eclipse becomes complete. And this eclipse is actually partial no matter where it is, I think, but it still counts kind of as an eclipse astrologically. One of the reasons why there are a few things which are recommended to be avoided during this time is basically when that sort of energy of Rahu is blanketing the earth for this few hours. It's almost like if you were consuming anything or taking anything in during that time, there can be a chance that there's an unconscious absorption of that energy of Rahu, of that energy of kind of like inauspiciousness, illusion, negativity, disillusionment, smoke clouding the mind, and things like that.
Nothing you really want to add to your life.
And so it's a time where you're kind of avoiding adding anything, except for a few things that we'll talk about in a minute.
So if you can, avoid direct exposure to the solar eclipse. Avoid eating, because again, when you're eating, you're taking in food, you're taking in the energy of the food, and that's not you don't want to add the Rahu energy while you're eating, so it's taking it in. Avoid starting a new activity, and of course, if these things are unavoidable, it's not doom or gloom, and don't...
There's no need to be afraid.
Yeah, and don't think, oh no, I did look at the last eclipse, or I did eat during... I don't know if I ate during...
It's not a big deal, but these are just things that can be helpful.
Yeah, and also, moving forward, you can always find ways to do things differently, and just see, does it improve your life, or,
So the actions that are kind of recommended and stressed to do during the eclipse, to take advantage of the eclipse, are all basically either related to spiritual meditation, so going inward and reflecting on the self, reflecting on self-realization, and your spiritual practice, whatever that spiritual practice is, or doing some kind of good karma.
Yes.
Doing some kind of good karma, and that's where the charity comes in. So any of these things are said to be
amplify
the positive results of either your meditation or your good karmic activities are amplified many, many, many times by performing them during the moment of an eclipse.
Right. Otherwise, any other sort of activity, it's best to just...
materialistic activities.
Yeah,
consuming, eating, sleeping,
buying.
all these, all that kind of stuff.
It's best to just avoid.
So the best mantras, which are said to be the most helpful during the time of an eclipse, are mantras that are either for the sun directly as a planet or related to the sun in some way. And so the basic sun mantra, Om Sūryāya namaḥ, is definitely a really positive mantra that you can use, because you're kind of connecting with the energy of the sun while the sun is in this weakened position, so trying to strengthen the sun and strengthen the sun in your life and the significations of the sun in your life to fight that Rahu energy that's trying to take over. So one of the other mantras that is recommended for during a solar eclipse is any mantra that's related to Shiva in any way. Shiva is Shiva is considered to be related to the sun. It actually states in Paladipika that any activity related to Shiva is solar activity. And so the simple mantra of Shiva, Namah Shivaya, is definitely a really positive mantra that you can take advantage of during the eclipse for a deep, deep meditation. It can be really powerful to meditate with that mantra during the eclipse. So any mantras related to the sun or Shiva are really good. One more thing that I have never experimented with myself that was really interesting for me to find out is actually in Thailand. A lot of the people there are very interested in Rahu, and they do a lot of Rahu sadhanas. Rahu is also a graha. We don't have to completely vilify Rahu. It's just that there's some negativity associated. But the Thai monks actually sometimes recommend doing the mantra of Rahu during the eclipse. I've never experimented with that, but maybe if you know that you have a very strong Rahu in your chart as opposed to the sun, that might be something that you can take advantage of.
Yeah, and again, it's experimentation. And we also have the mantra for Rahu on our YouTube channel, but none of the mantras will do any damage. So
they're very, very simple mantras that anyone can do.
They're simple and safe. So no matter if you choose to experiment with Shiva, a sun, or Rahu mantras, regardless, when you are saying them, chanting them, listening to them, that is still
creating a positive effect.
And a relationship with the graha. So if you engage in any spiritual practice during the eclipse, it's probably the most effective way to both shield yourself from the astrologically chaotic energy and supercharge your spirituality. So killing two birds with one stone. I love doing that.
So there's just a few other simple things that we also have written down that we've kind of seen as recommendations to do or avoid doing during the eclipse.
One thing you can do is bathe or shower before the eclipse. That way you remain in a sattvic state throughout the event, and that just kind of means clean, pure.
Yeah, and overall maintaining a sattvic state during the eclipse is kind of what all of these things are. Whether it's subtracting something like avoiding eating or avoiding going and seeing the eclipse, or avoiding starting a new important venture during the moment of the eclipse, or it's chanting mantras or doing meditation or self-reflection. All of these things are kind of ways of staying in a sattvic state, meaning staying in a state that is conducive to inner illumination and enlightenment, and avoiding things which are not sattvic, or things which will maybe pollute your consciousness or drag the consciousness down and connect it more with the material world, because during this moment the energy of Rahu is kind of trying to do that. It's trying to take people out of a sattvic state,
right,
and into a more materialistic state. So that's kind of where a lot of those sattvic, encouraging of sattvic behavior is coming from.
And the sun is considered a sattvic planet.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of ways that we categorize and classify planets and signs. And sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic are 3 ways that the planets can be categorized. And we don't have to get into that now. We can probably actually be a good... We can do a video kind of talk... Yeah, because it would be good to talk about that.
Yeah.
But since the sun is a sattvic planet, and that's what's kind of being, taken...
Hampered.
Yeah. Pulled away, maintaining sattvic energy is a good way to combat the negativity. Besides bathing before an eclipse, also if you bathe after an eclipse, it is said that it can wash away any of the negative energy that may have been accumulated. You can also use incense to create kind of a bubble of positive energy in the home. You can clean the house after an eclipse is over, and that also clears out the negative energy. Probably should be cleaning your house every so often anyway,
Yeah.
So...
Why not do it after the eclipse?
Yeah.
So you get rid of all that eclipse negativity.
And then you're doing a good thing at a really good time.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we're going to talk about a lot on this channel, and we try to talk about in all of our videos, is astrology as a means of doing things more efficiently, or getting more out of the activities that everyone would have to do anyways. There are so many things that people do in life, and by taking advantage of astrological information and timing especially as it's recommended from classical sources. People meditate anyways, people clean their house anyways, people bathe anyways, people might give charity anyways. Why not take advantage of this moment, which has been said for thousands and thousands of years to be a perfect, auspicious time to do those things?
We hope you enjoyed this video. We hope you found it helpful. And don't forget to, again, subscribe to our channel, like our video, and share any thoughts with us in the comments.
And don't forget to visit atmaoccult.com if you want to check out any of our books, articles, or consultations.